Right, looks like we're just about at 9 o'clock. I just want to do a quick handoff here before I hand things over to you, Rosa.
Yes.
Thank you everyone for jumping on. I know these Saturday sessions are recurring and always thought provoking, especially this one. So thank you for hopping on. I'm excited about this this talk, and I will hand it over now to our moderator, Director Rosa Musi. Thank you again, everyone. The recording link will be sent out at the start of next week. So if you missed a portion of it, or if there's any colleague that you know couldn't make it today, we're happy to send those out. Thanks again for joining, and take it away, Rosa.
Thank you so much, Bill. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Rosa Musi. I'm the academic director from the Metro Orlando campus. For me, it's an honor to join everybody and have my faculty, my professors, being part of this panel today. So we want to welcome you officially for being here on a Saturday. I know that we have had many opportunities for professional development. We've talked about different topics. And today's topic is about literature, humanities, and arts. The power of art, literature, and humanities to break the boundaries of communication/education. Today, so we want to take a few hours of your time to just talk about how we engage with students in the classroom when we are teaching, especially those general education disciplines. In our case specifically, we have professors from the literature or English literature, we have humanities and art and history, and also art. And how do we go about those students that lack the interest in topics that are not specifically directed to their core courses, their major courses? We have students that might be very receptive to studying, taking on an elective course, taking on a literature course. But sometimes we have those that want to stick more to those specific topics of information. They're nursing students and they want to just go about it, how to do their functions in their specialty. We have students that maybe are in math. So sometimes it's difficult to tackle this kind of topic of literature, humanities, the social science aspect of it. So today, our panel, our professors are going to bring us share techniques, tools, and best practices that they have implemented in their courses just to get a student engaged and happy and enrich that student's special course. So today I'm going to go and start going forward with my presentation. So the first panelist today is Professor Sharon Diaz. Professor Sharon Diaz's educational experience is in linguistic and speech communication, English education, and American literature. Her bachelor degree is from the University of Puerto Rico in Rio Piedras, and her master's degree is from the University of Puerto Rico in Mayagüez. She's also certified as a curriculum and instructional specialist from the University of West Florida. And before coming to teach to Orlando, our Metro Orlando campus, she worked as a language arts public school teacher in the Chicago public school system, as an English assistant instructor at the University of Puerto Rico and in Mayagüez, and also an English instructor at the Universidad del Este in Puerto Rico. She's currently a PhD candidate for the Instructional Design and Technology program at the University of West Florida, and Professor Diaz maintains an active research agenda that examines second language acquisitions, literacy, American literature, poetry, and spoken word as a teaching artifact, application of culturally relevant pedagogy to Latino and Latinx student population, and language context. And just to mention that Professor Sharon just this week passed her comp exams for her doctoral dissertation. So we're very excited with that information and that news. So as we say in Spanish, enhorabuena, Professor Diaz.
Thank you very much.
Yes, it's an honor. We also have Professor Angel Pagan. Angel Pagan has been teaching professionally since 1992. He believes that every human being has an incredible potential and that the pedagogical engagement is the opportunity to spark that potential. He has a bachelor degree in English literature and linguistics from Universidad Central de Bayamón and a master's degree in philosophy from Cleveland State University. He has taught critical thinking, philosophy, humanities, history of Christianity, human geography, and introduction to sociology, among other courses. Since 2017, he has been teaching in Ana G. Mendez, the Orlando campus, the online and Dallas campus. Besides teaching, he is currently designing online courses. Welcome, Professor Pagan. We also have Professor Fernando Molinares. Fernando Molinares, born and raised in Barranquillas, Colombia, knew that his passion was art at a very young age. He started drawing comic books and taking private lessons in painting during his high school years, after which he took his first undergraduate courses at the Escuela de Bellas Artes of the Universidad del Atlántico, while also earning a degree in advertising and graphic design from the Litoral University. He also took courses in religion, philosophy, language, art, and humanities at the Universidad Javeriana in Bogotá, Colombia, and completed a bachelor degree in fine arts from the University of Central Florida. While working as a portrait artist at the Disney World theme parks. A few years later, in 2021, while working at Universal Orlando as a lead artist, he completed his master's degree in fine arts from the Savannah College of Art and Design. That same year, he joined Ana G. Mendez University as an adjunct art and humanities course facilitator. Currently, along with his works in Ana G. Mendez, he works at Disney World, maintaining the artist's quality of show sets and animatronics figures, also tutoring private lessons in art. Professor Molinares is also an active member of the artistic community in Orlando, Florida, showing in local exhibition associated with the Orlando City Arts and volunteering for the Orange County Regional History Center as collection research translating documents from the 1700s Spanish Florida. Thank you, Professor Molinares, Professor Pagan, and Professor Sharon Diaz. So we are going to start. I'm going to stop sharing my presentation so Professor Sharon Diaz can upload her or share her screen. Professor Diaz is going to be the first one presenting. So today, our presenters will have between 15 to 20 minutes to showcase their work. After that, we will be taking questions. If you have any questions at the end of her presentation, you might raise your hand and I will call on you. You can also share your question in the chat and I will be able to go back to it, okay? So please keep your microphones in mute until the session for questions and answer comes up. Thank you. Professor Diaz, the floor is all yours.
Thank you very much, Ms. Musi, for those wonderful introductions. Thank you, everybody, for joining us this wonderful morning. I hope everybody can see my PowerPoint. Please confirm, Ms. Musi, if you can.
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much.
Of course.
So before I begin my presentation, I want to, it's a question that you can keep in your head and just answer it for yourself. You don't have to, maybe you can just share your answers in the chat. It's wonderful to see which are your favorite authors. So the question that I have for you is, which book, author, poem, short story has impacted your life and why? And this is the same question I always ask my students when I teach them, when we start the narrative unit writing. So I always ask them this question because I just want them to align themselves to literature or the word literature, which For some students, it's too much. Sometimes the word philosophy or even humanities or the arts, for them, it's like big words, right? And when you say those words in a composition class, usually they get pretty scared and anxious. But however, which book is the most important to you? And you'll see why. Now, the definition for the word literature is very broad, right? It's applicable to everything we do, because remember, even in the sciences, all pieces of text has begun as literature. They all began as written texts, okay? So literature in the broadest definition is a body of written works. It's applied to those imaginative works of poetry and prose. Is writing in prose or verse, the body of writings on a particular subject, the body of written works produced in a particular language or country, any printed matter, the production of literary work, especially as an occupation or a field of study, okay? So literature is very broad, but it's very significant. It is applicable, as you can see, to all fields of study. And this particular quote, it's kind of my definition, what I've seen, the definition of literature, but not only literature, also humanities and the arts, because even the arts, life can be seen through a piece of art, okay? So literature mirrors life, society, and the people that inhabit it and what they do: friendship, community, environment, justice. Tales or biographies of disaster, survival, homelessness, people in history, pioneers, technology, fantasy, mythology, civil war, disturbances of religion, or political issues. Literature prepares learners to contribute in speech and actions as productive members of their societies. So through literature, students can learn so much more than just academic vocabulary, being the first one, of course. And of course, the metaphors and everything that has to do with figurative language, for instance, but also the definition of life and human nature. Now, the first thing that I want to address is the question that if you're a language professor or an art professor or humanities, philosophy, even sciences, the first question that we have is why college students avoid reading. And, there's a lot of research out there that you can find very, updated and all of that. But the first reasons and the most concerning reasons, at least for professors, the first one is the poor reading comprehension that they have. We have to understand that when they are freshmen, and if this is the first experience in college, sometimes if they haven't had the experience in school, or maybe, as freshmen, this is where we start teaching them what reading comprehension is and how to address that. So one of the first reasons that I've seen is that students desire for more personal time in social media. And for example, I'm teaching a 115 class, which is the first English comms they have to take. There's a lot of reading and poetry and all of that fun stuff. But what I've seen is they rather be, stay on Facebook or even TikTok and all of that, and rather than reading a short story, for instance. And even though I tell them, literature is also in social media. I mean, the new movement that we have with using the acronyms for LOL, that's literature as well. If you think about it, it has many definitions. Now, students spend significantly more time on media and media devices than on reading. And also, the last but not least is the get students through approach in college, which is I want to start college, I want to graduate, I want to do a technical program, and I just, finish as fast as I can. I don't want to waste time taking this humanities, philosophies, or literature courses. I don't see the meaning behind those, right? And one interesting study from Hooft, he wanted to see the rate of reading compliance and the comprehension in a specific liberal arts and sciences learning seminar, which is what we know as, the philosophy, one of the first philosophy courses they have to take. And those students that decided to comply with all of the readings for the class, they stated that, I'm reading because I have a concern over my grades. It's not because I love the readings, but I have a concern over my grades. and what my professors think about me, if I'm good enough. And then those students that decided not to read, they thought that, my work schedule is difficult. I don't have time for reading. And my social life, it's more important. And mind you, this was this study was done in a state university. So most students realize that social life is more important than reading assignments, right? And obviously, for the first year students, their reading comprehension was very low. And then those students that decline in reading the assignments or comply with those assignments, their reading comprehension as well. So in a sense, these studies show us that it is very important to apply, or at least include, literature and arts and science and humanities philosophies in our courses. And my students, when they ask me, Professor, I don't see the importance of me reading a short story or a piece of poem. It's just too difficult for me to understand. And I tell them, when you go to law school, for example, and you sit with, I have a lot of students who are in criminal justice and, they want to go to law school. That's one of their goals. And I tell them, when it's time for you to sit with students and colleagues or coworkers from different parts of the world and from different universities, and they start talking about Shakespeare or someone else, like, what are you going to do, right? How are you going to react? And that's when their eyes start to open on their minds. Now, other reasons why literature is important and why do we should or must apply these to our courses. Number one, it engages readers, but not only engage readers, but we have to be very careful on the text that we select for our classes. We have to be aware that, the selection of those pieces of text have to be aligned with their cultural and identity backgrounds, right? Because if not, then it's going to be a little bit more difficult. And then obviously literature, arts and humanities enhance their vocabulary, their language use. They understand what are images in writing, what are symbols, what are those codes in communication that we use every day. And then obviously those stories that have complexity and subtly than in normal everyday communication enhances their understanding of human nature and experience. Also, it enhances their thought about aesthetics, right? In reading and in writing. They understand the structure of a text more better. Critical thinking and comprehension skills at the same time. And they can also understand textual comparisons. How can I compare two pieces of poetry? How can I compare two stories, right? And most importantly, it exercises their judgment about man, and which then helps to make judgment about life. For example, the poem that we're going to read today, it is very applicable to classes, for example, a social science class, a social work class, a psychology class, because it expands the idea of human nature and ethical behavior, which is very important for all fields. Now, there's a difference between, we have those students that read for pleasure. Maybe a lot of you have had those students who read for pleasure, and they love reading. And you can notice the difference between those students who read because, it's an assignment, and those students that read for pleasure. And you would see how better their vocabulary use is, right? In everyday language. For example, I have students from Puerto Rico, and they have had the experience in other universities in Puerto Rico, and they have read anthologies of literature. And even though their oral communication is different, it's a little bit lower than expected, their writing is beautiful because they have acquired that process, that writing process, and even they're able to use poetical devices in their writing. So it is something that you can notice. So having fictional literature, for example, it's an excellent source of linguistic instruction and a model, again, of human experience. Now, if you think that technical writing or just having a technical writing class is more effective than anything, than everything else. Sometimes, I disagree with that idea. For example, engineering attracts bright people and equips them to do important things, but it does little to help them understand the human condition or indeed the fullness of their own humanity. Sometimes students from sciences sciences or pharmacy programs, they're just, they just want to graduate and they don't have an idea of how important understanding human experience is. The only way we can do that is through literature and through reading. Now, one important thing, let me go back because I don't want to skip. It's just that my PowerPoint is kind of long, but okay. So students that read for pleasure have a deepened empathy and temporarily allowing them to have a greater understanding of others' mental states. Another study, now these studies, I can provide you with the references. However, there's a lot of updated versions out there and a lot of studies about this particular topic. Pleasure readers are all grade levels who score higher on standardized tests in all subject areas, develop greater reading comprehension, and had increased fluency and displayed higher levels of general knowledge. I remember when I started my undergrad studies in Puerto Rico, I remember having a professor that taught me, it was a philosophy class, I believe. It was like the first 2 years. And he said that the students that score higher in the law exam for the law school in the University of Puerto Rico were the students from humanities and philosophy programs. And, I always had that question in my head. And one of my best friends, he's a literature professor, and he said, well, obviously, because the law exam has so many questions in regards to critical thinking and analysis and philosophy questions, that obviously those students have to score higher. Okay, so that was just, I always tell my students, remember this, right? These standardized tests are not easy, and your fluency in reading and analysis has to be higher than expected. Now, reading provides background knowledge and comprehension skills necessary for students' achievement in sciences, maths, and history. Now, a lot of people question why mathematics. Obviously, because a lot of the exercises in math, you have to be able to deconstruct those questions. Now, I'm not a math whiz, I'm not a math major or nothing like that, but I do remember the standardized tests for grad school for University of West Florida. The questions were so difficult. And I wonder, someone from philosophy or the arts or someone from other areas can definitely understand these questions because they are very deep. And so it's very important to not only focus on, the STEM courses and, thinking about sciences, engineering and math are the only most important courses. But what would happen if those students graduate and they missed that particular stage of understanding what reading is? Now, a very important report came out a couple of years ago, and I think the Association of American Colleges and Universities, shorter for AAC&U, they every couple of years they publish a report on the 21st century skills college grads should have. And this is one of those reports that have helped the debate on many state universities around the US who are thinking, STEM courses are more important than the arts and humanities. And back in 2012, a lot of state universities decided that, we should just cut budgets for arts and literature because these programs are not as important. And I remember Harvard University the president started screaming, and he said, I cannot cut budget for these particular programs because my students who go into law school need to have understanding of all of these people from literature and the arts. It is not admissible. So I remember that debate happened a couple of years ago. And so people are starting to rethink and revalue the fact that these programs are not important anymore, because when they graduate, students need to prove they're good enough, right? With their, even their debate, the way they debate as lawyers. So that's just a thought right there. But one of the things that literature provides as part of the 21st century skills is self-awareness about the reason for studying, the learning process itself. They become integrative thinkers. And they have to be able to adapt the skills learned in one situation to new problems encountered in another, in a classroom, the workplace, communities, and personal lives. So intentional learners succeed even when instability is the only constant. And these are just there's a whole list on the 21st century college graduate skills, or the skills that we all should have, because, I remember one time I was a college student, and literature have helped me to be an integrative thinker and learner as well. Now, the intentional learner has to be empowered through intellectual and practical skills, informed by knowledge and ways of knowing, and responsible for personal actions and civic values. And thank God, all of these civic values we are taught through history, through sciences, through social sciences, through philosophy, art, and humanities. And these are all done through literature and text, because remember, all of these, for example, Charles Darwin, Karl Marx, all of these wonderful, they were writers back then, right? They were not scientists first. They wrote first, and then literature became famous through them. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Now, for this particular activity, I'm almost done with my part, but for this particular strategy that I'm gonna teach you now, this is just a strategy that I will teach you in terms that you can use in your class. However, it's applicable to all fields, but however, there are many other strategies out there that you can find and use for your class. I'm gonna select a piece of poetry, a poem. That's very, it's very important for, to teach ethics and life matters. So when I ask people and students, and I've seen in other literature out there, why poetry is not important. Well, poetry, for students, the language of poetry takes too much time to decipher. Poetry is frustrating. How do you know if what I'm reading it the right way? Who's to say what a poem means? Poetry is too disconnected from reality. I don't have time for something that has no practical application to my world. Poetry is self-absorbed. Obviously, for example, when I started my undergrad program years ago, I'm not gonna say when, but years ago, right? I was always not taught, but I always believe that poetry and philosophy and the arts is just for a specific type of, this is for academics. It's not applicable to my life. It's just, I don't understand. This is still a thought from my students as well. Poetry is rarefied. It doesn't speak to common everyday experience. The English use, even for Spanish, those Spanish words are too difficult. I don't understand. It's not common language. Poetry is boring. I'd rather be doing something more active and interactive than just reading Shakespeare, for instance. However, why is poetry important? And this is the reason why I selected poetry. I think literature is important in short stories as well, but poetry has a specific, more learning components than anything else. And I think it's phonics, phonemic awareness, language development skills, such as rhyming, word families, and alliteration, which is repetition. Poems provide a simpler context for students to practice all of these skills using text that is at their interest and academic levels. For instance, in my class, I tend to use poetry that is, for example, Caribbean poetry is one branch of poetry, Latino poetry, Latinx poetry. So there are many different types of poetry that you can select. It's a medium, again, for exploring experience and is a ways of making meaning processes through we develop existential sense of ourselves as actors in larger social worlds. Now, I'm going to show you a couple of examples that that you can use in your class as well. These poems that I'm going to show you are examples from a report that was done from Clemson University. And it's very interesting. This particular university has been using poetry across all fields, all different subject matters. And it's called the Poetry Across the Curriculum. And this particular group of professors from all fields, sciences, philosophy, arts, humanities, and psychology, they decided to apply poetry in their courses through different lenses and perspectives, of course. And in this particular example, it was from abnormal psychology class. And the professor asked the students to write as if they had a mental disorder. And in this particular example, the student focused on the struggle to maintain healthy personal boundaries while caring for an emotionally needy client. And so she focused on the threat of professional burnout in her field and the challenge of feeling a sense of hope despite all the setbacks as a psychologist. And this is the poem that she came through. The mental health professional. Have you ever, I'm just gonna read it as quick as fast as I can. Have you ever made cornbread, watched the golden batter hit the hot skillet and ooze, bubbling and slow to fill the pan? Have you ever been frustrated, felt it slide over, your hot skin and ooze, bubbling and slow to feel the core of you? I feel the oozing. Is that even a real word? It doesn't matter if it is or isn't or wasn't or couldn't be, because all I feel is the ooze. The utter ooziness of the ooze is oozing, because I know that it doesn't matter if it is tricyclic, antidepressants, or lithium, or benzodiazepines, or chicken noodle soup. Because I know that it doesn't matter if it is 4 days or 2 weeks or 13 years, because I know that she will be back in my office oozing her life into my pan of golden cornbread. And this is from a psychology class. And obviously the professor already had prepared them on what is poetry, or maybe if you can use rhyming and such. Now, poetry is very open. Poetry has no boundaries. You don't necessarily need to use rhyming. You don't necessarily need to use all of the poetical devices that we study in literature courses, because poetry is just an experience between the student and the paper. Now, this is another example from a biology class. So as you can see, this particular course, they read human evolution, and they were studying research, how to do research in the science field and how ethical it can be. And so they decided, the professor asked them to think about everyday application of science in their lives. And in this particular poem by Emily, she focused on the emotional issue of ethics and research in human subjects. And this is how it came out. This morning, I killed a man. I was a doctor on duty, watching as he gulped chest, heaving for his last breath of air. He was lying on the ground when I walked in today. Our motto, to better the lives of all mankind, seemed strangely inhumane suddenly. 4 years ago, we began researching AIDS. Still a virus without a cure, it was our idea that we could make further developments towards such an end by studying the disease in detail. The only way to objectively do such was to watch men, like B. John, die. I myself was the one who suggested we withhold the drugs. My blindness, my failure to see. How many more will come? Oh God, what have I done? This morning, I killed a man. So this is just 2 examples to give you an idea of how the connection you can have with, students can have with a piece of text, with literature, with a piece of poem. Now, in the last activity that I'm going to ask you to do, and then I'll move on, paso la batuta, as we say in Spanish. One of the most important poems out there, it's written by Robert Frost, one of the most important American writers of all times. And the title of the poem is The Road Not Taken. He wrote this poem when he was living in England. And this particular poem is applicable to all fields of study. It is related to ethics, life experience, and most of the themes, I mean, there's many others. Remember, poetry can be seen through many perspectives and through many eyes and point of view. So one of two themes that are, you know, in this particular poem is choice and uncertainty about choosing two different paths in life. And individualism and unconformity after you have selected a path in your life. And it does not suggest a solution to the question of the meaning in the speaker's voice or the speaker's choice, which is us as the readers, but rather comes to embody the question itself, allowing for contemplation of the mysteries of interpreting a life. So I'm going to read it, and you think about which paths am I selecting in my life? How many paths, how many choices do I have? Maybe after graduation, maybe after I take this class, maybe after getting married, maybe after becoming a nurse, becoming an economist, becoming a teacher. And those are the questions that you always should have or ask students when you give them a piece of poem or a piece of text. So the road not taken. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry, I could not travel both. And be one traveler, long I stood and looked down as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other as just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear. Though as for that, the passing there had warned them really about the same. And both that morning equally lay in leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day, yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh, some were ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. So he has two choices, right? And he decided to take the road that was less traveled by, because there was one on the other one was already weared out, right? Everybody was taking that path. So he decided to take the one that looked less wear. Once he looked back, he said, now I'm considering that I took the best path. But then at the end, he says, hey, I think I made the right choice. It made all the difference. Now I'm gonna give you a couple of minutes. I have a quick exercise for all of you, and this is how we begin with poetry writing in your class. This is a strategy that you can use in your class. You know, there's others, but I think this one is the most, is the easiest one for students, and also it helps them to connect more with the poem. So I'm gonna ask you, or I ask my students, to write a letter to the author, to the theme, to the tone, expressing how do you feel about your life choices? Or write a letter to the character explaining why you selected your career path. Was it difficult to make that decision? So I asked my students, if you were to write a letter to Mr. Frost, just express your thoughts, your beliefs, or just answer this question. How do you feel about your life choices? Do you want to go back? Do you feel any regrets? And if it's connected to their field of study, probably I asked them, if you are, using one example, if you're a nurse, if you're a teacher, how do you feel about your career choice? Anything that you find to be stressful? Are you anxious about it? So I'm gonna give you, I don't know if I have a couple of 3 minutes, probably. I just need 3 minutes. I'm gonna share in the chat a link for a Padlet. You can just go into this Padlet and answer these questions. Where's my Zoom? Oops. Okay, chat. Okay, so I'm gonna paste the Padlet link on the chat, and you don't have to do this, but you can just go into this Padlet and answer these questions. You don't have to write a whole letter, but just answer a couple of questions. If you were to write a letter or a comment to Mr. Frost, do you think your life choices are correct? Are you comfortable with your life choices? So I'm just gonna give you 2 or 3 minutes, and then I'll move on with the last part of my presentation.
This is Professor Diaz.
Yes.
So I click on the plus sign in the Padlet, and that's where I'm able to write. It comes the pop-up. Am I doing it correctly?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sorry. Yes.
No, that's okay. Yeah.
Click the plus sign, write your answer, and then publish. Okay. Let me move on. Let's see. Okay, I have a couple of answers there. I have a very short poem there. Sometimes sometimes I never know if we made the correct choices. Sometimes I do. Sometimes I know I made a mistake. Sometimes I can go back. Sometimes I can't, but I am all right. Very good. So you can actually reply back to any of these little posts, post-it notes if you'd like. Okay. So let me show you real quick, how can you, once you have your poem or the letters from your students, your question may be, how do I change these letters into poetry? And this is very interesting because, again, this work for all different fields and subjects. So what I do is create line breaks with my poems. I do have a quick example on the screen. And as you can see, this little letter to a student's grandma. In this particular exercise, they had to create a poem based on a letter, but it was about someone important in their life. And for this particular example, it was her grandma. And as you can see, what we did is create a poem using line breaks. And line breaks is when you begin a verse and move on to a second one. So for example, in this one, the first line created two different verses. I was so young, really, line break, when you died, but I remember your sharp smell of mothballs, your teeth soaking in a cup, what you listened to talk radio, your quick sense of humor, your red and white picnic cloth dress, your chicken soup you put in your teeth, put on your tablecloth dress and walked me to Brigham's for a mocha fudge cone. Your worry, a cage I hated. Your love, a cushion I needed. So this is the final step when you create a poem and when you use poetry in your class. There are many other strategies, but this one is more aligned with our students' knowledge, especially if they are scared about reading a poem or reading a short story or even a story or a book or anything. So I hope you liked and enjoyed this strategy, my part of the presentation. And, you know, the purpose for our presentation is for you to understand the alignment and the connection we can all have. It doesn't matter your field of study with literature and the arts. So thank you very much. This is my end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Diaz. It was super enriching. I'm still writing my letter. Excellent tool to use in the classrooms. So thank you for that, for all of your presentation. And I wanted to share from the chat, one of the first slides that you presented was about the author that had impacted or made an impact into our lives. What book or what author? So we have a few. We have William Faulkner, A Rose for Emily. We have James Moulton with The Lost Horizons. We have poems of Andrés Eloy Blanco, La Renuncia. We have Gabriel García Márquez with Crónica de una Muerte Anunciada. That was the one I put. I love that book. We have Paula from Isabel Allende, El Quijote. That's a classic, obviously. We also have books from Rómulo Gallego, Julio Cortázar, Mario Benedetti, Mario Vargas Llosa. Y I think I missed one last, that Professor.
Chopin.
Sorry?
I think it's Kate Chopin from Professor Torres.
And I think Professor Hector Segnini, he wrote down another one that I missed. It was throughout the end of your presentation. William Carlos Williams.
Yes, William
that one. Yes. So I also, okay, Chopin. Pío Robons, Las Aventuras de Salacaín, El Aventurero. I didn't know that one. So thank you. I would look into it. If somebody else has any questions, they can just open their mic and share that question. It can be in Spanish. We don't have to just stick to the English. You're free to speak Spanish if you feel. I did want to bring out a comment just this morning when my brother-in-law shared a picture of her daughter's classroom where it says, "Si quieres aventuras, lánzate a la lectura." So it rhymes, but it also gives you, even in a small sentence, it gives you the opportunity to understand that if you read, you are open to 1,000 adventures. Another comment that I wanted to bring in is that how you mentioned the LOL, the memes that we're using, you're making literature using the LOLs and all of those type of, that you might even say those typos, but they're not typos. There's so much context into those small letters and all connected. So thank you for that. Anybody has any questions? Feel free to open your mics.
And something you can do if you love these authors, you can use them in your class as well. Because again, every piece of literature comes from a specific setting, from a specific timeline. So when you think about, you know, the timeline when the writer selected that specific theme, that tone, those characters, everything could be analyzed in those different perspectives. So that's something that you can do as well. For example, in a Spanish class, Don Quixote, we don't only read El Quijote. I remember I read the whole thing in college, but I remember the professor also analyzed El Quijote using the different timeline and you know, all of the different experiences characters went through and also the historical framework when it was written. So that's something that you can use as well and practice in your class.
Thank you so much. So if a question comes up, just write it down. We still have opportunity to bring in or just start a conversation or comment. Thank you, Professor Diaz.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
I'm going to now make and share the co-host to Professor Ángel Pagán. So Professor Pagán, you're able at this moment to share your presentation. Let me know if you're, now we can hear you.
I'm not muted. I just
Okay.
put that up. I
Okay.
did that on purpose. That's part of the trick of getting people in this thing. You know, you have to see my students when I do that to them, because they were doing something else. They were not paying attention to me anyways. So when I do that, they get crazy. Is it my volume? Is he muted? What's going on? Hey, professor. And they started writing on the chat and they start saying stuff like, Professor, you're muted. And then I say, I'm not. And they're like, oh, he isn't, you know, stuff. Hold on, let me see if I could get this thing. Okay, so it says share screen.
Yes.
And I go to host, disable participant screen sharing. I'm not allowed.
What do you mean you're not allowed? Let me see.
That's what I get for doing
Make
stuff.
co-host. Do you want to make a co-host? Yes. I just did it again.
Okay. Oh, yeah, I got it.
Okay.
So
Sorry.
I click on my presentation and I share my presentation. And then I put here the thing here. No.
Yeah, there we can see it.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So good morning still. My name is Ángel Pagán. I am in Puerto Rico. So if suddenly you see everything going dark, it's because electricity went off. But I'll run upstairs and get the energy thingy going and connect it right away and use my phone in the hotspot. But we are going to do this. Thank you for being here.
Fingers crossed, Professor.
Thank you for being here this morning. In terms of definitions, humanities, I teach philosophy and I teach humanities. I teach other courses that have to do with the human thing, the human thing. And when I say the human thing, I'm not being disrespectful or anything. I am part of the human thing. But the human thing and the human condition, which is basically the way most thinkers look at this, the human condition. What is the human condition? It's been tried many times to be defined, and we see that we are influenced. Sharon, thank you so much. You gave me so many ideas with what I want to do. You see the expressions of the human condition in the humanities and the arts and all these things based on the moment in which we're living. So what I try to do in humanities is to do that. I try to connect what the students are doing with the LOL, thing, and see how that connects with the things that we're going to talk about in humanities and whatever. And, it's really challenging, but let's see if I could share some experiences, and some of them might work for you. And I hope that you share some ideas with me. Definitions: humanities, the branches of learning such as philosophy, arts, or languages that investigate human constructs. Academic disciplines that study aspects of human society and culture include the study of all languages, literatures, the arts, history, and philosophy. Any field of study outside the professional training: mathematics, natural and social sciences, the quality or state of being human, the totality of human beings. From the beginning, I have to tell you, we don't have a definition of human nature that is final. We have many definitions. Many philosophers come up with different definitions. One of the professors mentioned, for example, Vargas Llosa. And then if you look at Vargas Llosa's perspective on the human condition, and then you compare it to Garcia Marquez's perspective on human condition, and then you compare it to Saramago's perspective, it's different. Fascinating, all of them. So we have to find ourselves, we have to find our definition within the human condition. And that's what humanities is trying to do, at least the way I try to do it. How do I try to get them engaged, even when this is not their field? So when I'm teaching my students, I'm thinking all the time that they don't care at all about what I'm bringing to the classroom. They're not interested. It's not their field, so they don't care. They want the degree to get the job and all these things. And by the way, many of the people who are already professionals are working in the different fields, still don't care. So what I'm trying to show and demonstrate, more important than teaching, to show and demonstrate, to put them in the spot. That's key, to put people in the spot in which they have to act and solve a situation. What's in it for me? For example, when I'm talking about ethics, I'm talking about ethics in a philosophy course. I want the nursing students to think, wait, there's an old person here who's got COVID, and then there's a young kid right here who's got COVID. We don't have beds for both of them. We don't have treatment for both of them. We don't have enough. And this happened for real in Italy in the beginning of the COVID situation, I think a year or 2 years ago. And they had to make a decision. They had to make a decision because it's reality. It's real life. They have to choose who they are going to treat. That's it. So how do you make a decision there that is ethically right? And the truth is that you're going to find a decision that is supported by your approach to the human condition. So there's humanities helping us try to make decisions. If you're talking about business, in business, I always think about Cleopatra and how Cleopatra was able to bring Julius Caesar, down and say, dude, easy. This is Egypt. This is not Rome. I know that Rome is taking over the world, but Egypt is Egypt. So chill. And of course, you're thinking, well, they had sex and whatever. That's part of it, yes. But she was a business manager. She knew what she wanted. There's an awesome book. I forgot the title, but it's Cleopatra something. And the book explores Cleopatra as a manager of an empire and trying to make sure that this other empire doesn't steal her empire kingdom, and Julius Caesar held on. And the story goes, and it's fascinating actually, when the students get into this, they're not into humanities, but when we talk about the fact that she was able to keep Julius Caesar off Egypt in terms of being in power, and then came Mark Antony and all that, and it becomes a soap opera, una novela, telenovela, because there was love and passion and all these things, and there's death and suicide and all these things. And at the end, Rome ended up with Egypt in their hands by Julius Caesar inheritor. But we have to cut that story short right there. But that's what we try to do, or I try to do in humanities. I try to make sure that they realize that these things, when you say Cleopatra to students, realize they think about the movies and how beautiful she was. Yes, that's part of it. But it's not about just beauty. It's thinking. Cleopatra had a brother. She had to kill him. You know what I'm saying? So she was managing this thing. I'm not saying that students should kill anyone, but what I'm saying is that she had to think what decisions she had to make in order to keep this gig running. Shock. I want students to be shocked. I want students to, when they come into my classroom or into my online class, they come with, oh, here we go again, you know, philosophy, humanities, we're going to talk about paintings, and we're going to talk about, you know, okay, cool, no problem. So what I do is I shock them in many different ways. In ethics, for example, I'm used to hear students say, for example, if something is good for you, then it's good. If you don't like it, then it's bad. And that's it. Everything is relative, subjective. Each one has a perspective on what is right and what is wrong. So if you think it's wrong, then it's wrong. If the other one thinks it's right, then it's right, and that's it. And that's scary sometimes, because you know it's kind of hard to get into general stuff. But one of the things that I say, okay, so you're saying that if somebody thinks that child pornography is right, it is right. Those 3 seconds right there are the boom. Those, they go, wait, no, hold on, give me 1 minute, professor. I got an answer for you. Usually the answer is, ugh, you know, but can you support? Ugh. And then you have to build a logical argument. And that logical argument will get you to the fact that it is wrong, and it's wrong by nature. Because human beings are endowed, oh, we could go into the Constitution right now, but we don't want to do that, are endowed with a dignity and freedom. And the human being within that level, a child, is not able yet to make decisions. So if you're not able yet to make decisions, then you're not free to make decisions. So your freedom has to be taken care of. Somebody has to be taking care of you. And if you're taking advantage of a child, blah, 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 blah. You see what I'm saying? So what I'm doing is shocking them to realize themselves, not me, to realize themselves that this is not right and it's not relative. It is not just anyone. Challenge. We're going to go to challenge later because I want to show you what some students have been able to do with some challenges that I've put up in front of them. Break up paradigms, the typical ideas that we grow up with. Let me give you one. I hear all the time, well, if it's logical, it's right. No. If it's logical, means that the conclusion follows from the premises. It doesn't mean that it's right. Hitler was logical. He was logical. He said, well, I kill everybody here and I'll take over. Therefore, I rule. All right, that's logic right there. It doesn't mean that it's right. And that's why you have to get into the humanities to see, wait. Although you will rule, that doesn't mean that you ruling is right. That doesn't mean that taking the life of people is right. So one of the things that I keep seeing, even in professionals, you know, sometimes we think that we got it right because what we are saying is logical. When something is logical, it means that your conclusion follows from your premises. That's one of my fields in philosophy that I love most. But it doesn't mean that you're doing the right thing. It means that it's gonna work, like the pragmatic ethics of the United States, which is based on the fact that if something works, then we do it and it's good. You know, I'm trying to remember that James, I think, is one of them. So, you know, if it works, it's good. That's the pragmatic ethics of the United States, and that's how the United States has built this huge, incredible country. But some people have had to pay the price for that. Ask, yes. That's one thing that is very important for me. I ask my students all the time. I ask, if, for example, we're talking about, I don't know, like Sharon said, she said that she put them to write poems, and those poems are related to a situation that they're going through, or something they're feeling or thinking. And the first thing they might say is, well, I don't know how to write poetry, but that's fine. You know how to express your feelings, so engage in it. So I asked my students, what is the right thing to do here? What does this painting say? Like, we show a painting and they have to write down what the author was trying to tell us through the images. And this is awesome to do it with abstract painting. I'm sure Professor Molineros is going to talk about that. Abstract painting is challenging. Is students go look at it and go, that doesn't say anything. It does. I'm thinking here about an incredible painter that I just learned from some months ago, Rothko, Rothko, and he has some beautifully depressing artwork, but I love it. You can tell I'm wearing my existential shirt, you know, my dark existential shirt. And the other thing that I do is let them take over and watch closely. That means I know the theme for today. I know my objectives. They are clear. I know that at the end of this class or lesson or experience, they're going to be able to do X. So I know the end of this movie, this lesson. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back and start from a point in my lesson that is going to take us there. But I want them to do the process. That sort of like constructivism a little bit, you know, in education. So I want them to build up toward that end. We work on the things that they have to end up doing. Another thing that I, you know, sometimes it works and we do it a lot is we bring famous people that have been in the humanities, which is cool. And when they say people that they might recognize, like that guy at the bottom right, you look at the bottom right, that's Angel Pagano, famous philosopher. I'm sorry, I just made that up. I wasn't there. I just put myself there. But when you look at Martin Luther King, when you look at, let me see who else. Luther King might be one that they might recognize. My favorite philosopher, but they don't care about, is Miguel de Unamuno, for example. Ricky Gervais, comedian. So they realize that this is not something that is like separated from culture or society. This is real. People actually go to school and study humanities. And, well, I'm a humanities professor, so I always say this, but I think it brings you to a perspective of life and reality that other fields might not be able to. And the beauty of it is that that's what it's all about. How can we bring the questions that humanities, critical thinking, philosophy are asking in the fields? When we're talking about business, Thales, a pre-Socratic philosopher, Thales of Miletus, he was observing nature and he realized how things work. Instead of believing in myths and mythological things, we're talking about 600 years before Christ in Greece, in Miletus. And he says, wait a minute, I just realized that when the sun does this, the earth is like this, da, da, da. So he said, you know what? Get me some land with olives. And he basically rented all the spaces with olives. This is business right there. He saw an opportunity, and he saw an opportunity because he was a critical thinker. He saw an opportunity because he was observing nature. And that's what they're doing to us right now. The people that are selling stuff to us, those of us in business administration or marketing or things like that, they look at us, what is it that we want? Where are our students in Twitter, Facebook? I think Facebook is for old people like me. I think my students are not using Facebook anymore. I'm not sure. I haven't been to Facebook in years, so I don't know. So they are there. And what did companies do? They went in there and they got their attention. So what I do is I invade their spaces with the humanities. We got Rowling, Harry Potter. We got Eisner, Disney, Steve Jobs. And I didn't know this one, the Whole Foods co-founder study humanities. This is the awesomest place to buy food. Well, maybe, I'm not sure. I like it. So humanities expand our knowledge of human cultures and help us understand what binds us together and what differentiates us from one another. In addition to these high-level insights, however, they also provide practical applications that can enhance our professional experiences. These areas in humanities have to be matched with what the students are trying to do. Again, nursing, business, criminal justice. My students who are in criminal justice, for example, I place them in a situation in which they are in the scene of a crime, and suddenly we're looking around and we see, I don't know, a bag full of bills, and there's over $1 million in there. Nobody's gonna notice if you take 100,000 from there. Nobody's gonna know. Nobody's gonna know. If nobody knows, remember the tree falling in the forest? If nobody hears it, doesn't make a sound. There you go. Let's be unethical. And students, hopefully, they're gonna say, no, that's wrong. We shouldn't do that. And why not? My question is always, why not? Why not break the rules? Why not do it differently? So they have to defend themselves. And in the process of defending themselves, they find new ways of explaining what they think. Are these ways solid, or do they need a little bit of work? And that's when the humanities come in. I put this book in there because this is one book that I read years ago. It's from the 90s. But it was very, very, very important for me. It's about, preparing lessons and education, how to build up that lesson that would actually engage students. Each one of us is different. We do things in different ways. So I don't want you to think that what works for me might work for you. Some things, I adopt a lot of things from the people that I listen to. Like I was listening to Sharon right now, and I was writing down some ideas. So I'm stealing from you, Sharon. I'm sorry. And I'm not gonna pay you for it. I have no money. But I get those ideas because I know, hey, wait a minute, I'm gonna use the letter that became a poem. Wow, boom, that was awesome. So I want to do that. I want to, I brought my Sartre, being a nothingness, terrible. But I love this quote right here. It says, I am so worried about the distance that I forgot the point. I don't know, maybe I'm finding some meaning that, but I am so worried about the distance that I forgot the point. Think about mathematically. Think about an engineering building a structure. I am so worried about the distance that I forgot where I want to go. And the distance for Sartre is emptiness, nothingness, blah, blah. I'm not going to get into that because I don't even understand it myself. But sometimes we need to focus on where we want to get, and the distance has to be traveled. And there I go with Sharon's poem, one way or the other. And after you make that decision, that's it. You have to be responsible for the decision you made. Do not go, this is one of my favorite poems in the universe. And it's not because it's good. When I say good, I mean nice. I don't mean a good poem, I mean a nice poem. You might not want to share this with children, because then they might rebel. I could see Professor Musi trying to deal with her son when he says, you know what, I am not going to go gentle. into school or something. But Dylan Thomas, he had a hard life. Do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. I don't know if we would all agree on that one. I am 55 and I hope that I'm gonna rage until I'm 90. I'm not sure. I may rage slowly, but I hope I rage. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage against the dying of the light. And when I shared this with my students, I'm saying, look, are you doing the thing that you want to do? Are you in the business program because business is your thing and you wouldn't do anything else? That's it. You're a business person. Boom, boom, boom. You want to do business. You're always thinking that I'm not a business person. I'm not. I wouldn't be able to. I remember listening to Charlie Colon in Orlando, and he's boom, boom, his business. Bah, bah. He tells you everything, and you say Merry Christmas to Charlie, and he puts it into a business perspective. What is business about, or what is Christmas about? It's a business. No, it's not a business. So when I share this poem with my students, I want them to think about their choices in terms of professional fields. Are you going toward the thing that you really love? Because I'm sorry to tell you, but life is not forever, at least for you, for me. We're here maybe something around 100 years, 100, maybe 10 years, if we take care of ourselves really well. But we're not going to be here forever. So how about if we take this opportunity, this short opportunity to take called life, and turn it into our thing, the thing that we love, the thing that we are engaged with. And my students in Orlando, they know that was really messed up. I hope they never went to Rosamusi with a complaint, because they know that in every class I said, you know that we're gonna die, right? And if they learn something from me, is that we are mortal. And if you are mortal, then this is your project. Then this is your opportunity to develop that project. And you have to take all the real steps, not just a dream. When Martin Luther King is saying, I have a dream, he was actually acting on it. He was protesting. He was putting together meetings with politicians. He was going places. So the dream became a structure, a real one. Like a sculpture. Da Vinci had an idea and he put it into practice through action. So that's what I mean when I say that humanities need to engage with us in the real world. The real world is where humanities happen. However, parenthesis, I'm afraid I saw the other day a conference in which they were talking about NFTs. Do you know what NFTs are? No, non-fungible tokens, I think. It's scary. It is scary. Give you an example. The brand Gucci. Gucci is making shoes, and you could buy them for $600,000 crypto coin, and your avatar online could wear it. But the shoes don't exist. I'm going to leave it right there. I'm not going to get into that. It's weird, it's scary, but it's real. And my students already know about it. And then we go into philosophy. What is reality? Do we live in the real world? I mean, look at us right now. We are online and we're looking at, hopefully you're real people. I don't know if you're real people. I see you, nodding there and stuff. So hopefully you are real. So the real has changed. Philosophy brings you into that level of thought and brings the conversation. And when I say philosophy, I don't want philosophy that is constantly abstraction, separating us from real life. I want philosophy about what is going on right now. What are we doing right now? And I have to get up every morning and I have to go to work, blah, blah, and that's reality. The people that build the country are people that get up every morning. They don't own buildings. They don't own, it's the people that actually get up every morning to do work. So they have a specific life, and I want them to think about what is the meaning of that existence, blah, blah. Okay, so an activity, for example, that I would use is how many years do we have left? And that is freaking scary. But I do it myself at the beginning. I was born in 1967. Stop doing the math. Don't do the math. I was born in 1967. And so I know that by 2067, I am not here. But there's going to be a 2068. So wait, rewind. I have to make sure that I have a plan for this project. This project is real. I need to stop saying, oh, I want to do this and I want to do that, and someday I'm going to do this other thing. No. A poem. I'm going to create a poem right now, Sharon. I remember my mother's new clothes that she never wore because she was expecting a special event. And she passed away. And I remember taking those clothes from her closet. And they had the tickets and everything where she bought them. And I said, oh my God, some of us live without finding that special event. No, let's make special events. I make them. I create special events. Nobody cares, but I do care. You know, it's my event. It's my thing. And, you know, again, shocking. He who sacrifices freedom for security deserves neither. And you might or might not agree with that. And that's fine. The beauty is in the conversation. The beauty is in the engagement. The beauty is in the building up an argument in favor or against, and that you use to prove your point. I'm almost done. So challenge. I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. This is part of the poem that Sharon shared with us. And let me share this with you. In the years just before his death in 1824, Theodore Giraud, I do not know French, I'm doing my best, had in fact produced a series of paint. Giraud is kind of the guy who promoted Professor Molinares to help me here. Kind of the Impressionist movement. He was very famous, but then something happened. I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. He had taken a road, and then he kind of, in his old age, he kind of thought about it, and he started painting people with dementia. Before this, we wouldn't do that. You paint important people. You know, I'm doing the quoting thing. You paint important. Now he says, wait a minute. All humans count. All humans are important. And then he has a series. It's beautiful, beautiful. And it was not found until 50 years after he died. So this is a person that suddenly went, wait a minute, there's something that I haven't done. And he did it. And when I go back to the poem, you know, has made all the difference. Now we have this. Now we have, and I want my students to think about that. What is it that at the end of your life, you might say, oh, I should have done X or Y or Z or whatever. What are we here for? Purpose, meaning. Oh, I love it. In philosophy, I love that one because I tell my students, which is not very, I mean, when I do this, I do it in certain circumstances in which, first of all, I'm teaching adults, you know, so it's important that this is for adults. And then I make sure that I do it in a way that is kind of open. I don't say this is final. What are we here for? We here for nothing. Existentialism, there you go. But then you could use Aristotle. And Aristotle says, no, we are here to be happy. For real, that's what Aristotle says. We're here to be happy. But wait, what does that mean? What is happiness? And then you ask each student, and they provide some type of definition of what happiness would be. And then we discuss those things. I mean, are you engaged in the project that would get you to be happy? Are you in the process of building up your academic program? Are you working on your grades? Are you doing the things that you really want to do? Are you going to end up where you want to go for real? Robert Frost, I doubted if I should ever come back. Oh, I doubted if I should. Can we go back? The beauty of time is that, no, there's no past. That's Sartre. There's no past. It's memories. Yeah, memories, yes. But they don't have to necessarily guide your decisions now. Sometimes, yes, you use them as experiences to make choices. But Sartre says, it's consciousness. Is consciousness being aware that there was something that happened and memories and all these things? Yes, cool. One of my favorite thinkers and writers and made a huge difference in my life was reading Frankel and Man's Search for Meaning. I still have the copy that I read, and it's all yellow and everything. It is the pursuit of happiness that towards happiness. It is the pursuit of happiness that towards happiness. I don't know what that means. And I ask my students, what do you think that means? Wait, this guy is saying that I'm looking for something that in the process of looking for it, I'm messing it up. How about if I act in a certain way or live in a certain way that I love, that that is engaging, that makes me feel good and takes me there? I don't know how we're going to do this. And students have to build it themselves. Again, that's a little bit of constructivism. I'm not going to go into this. Basically, when I put the objectives here is because I wanted to make sure that we know where we're going in our lessons and in humanities is very important because students don't think that humanities are important. So I need to make sure that, for example, at the end of this activity, the students are going to be able to identify from a list of at least 3 ideas presented by Jean-Paul Sartre. Very specific. So I need to make sure that within my lesson, I presented more than 3, 4, 5 ideas. And I gave examples. And they could connect with them. They have to be specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, timely. So I have to make sure that this could be done within this lesson. So whatever it is that I'm going to be asking my students, I know what the tasks are going to be. I know what the assignments are going to be. And I know they could be done. They could be done within. And I have a diverse body of students. So some of my students might not get it very quick. And some of the students, so I'm going to provide experiences and engage in certain different activities that would help us get there. And some other students might help us in the process too. Constructivism, learners construct rather than record understanding. And that has important implications in the way we teach. So if we are there to provide, like when we're going to cook, we just bring the ingredients and then you suggest, how about if we do this? And they have the pan, they have the stove, and they put together the ingredients in some certain way. And that's why the way your mom cooks asopao is different from the way the neighbor cooks asopao. It's asopao, but it's done in a different way. And that's how diversity is expressed through the experience with my students. I'm going to go quick, sorry. We should provide learners with a variety of examples and representations. That's very important of content, provide high levels of interaction in our teaching and connect content to the real world. That's so important. Make sure that whatever ideas you're bringing, I mean, again, I love philosophy, but I want to make sure that the ideas that I'm bringing to study philosophy are connected to the world that they have to solve every day, that this has meaning within their daily lives, and that's very important. Learners are naturally active and curious. I know some of you are going to say, no, they're not, they're texting. Well, awesome, use it. One activity that I do with my students, for example, since they are texting all the time, I use Protagoras. Protagoras said, man is the measure of all things. Man is the measure of all things, right? So everything is relative. Everything is relative. Why? Because I am the measure of all things. I am the one who decides what things are worth. So I tell my students, let's do this. Text someone. just text, I am the measure of all things. Oh, you have to hear the stuff that they get back. Usually they text their boyfriend, girlfriend, or husband or wife. And, you know, sometimes you get WTF. Sometimes you get no. Sometimes you get, I am the measure of all things. So who, you know, and you could engage into who makes decisions in this home, who decides what is valuable. Should we go to grandma's house or should we take a vacation to Disney? You know, so is a vacation to Disney important? Yes. Who decides that? You know, what he is permitted to do is what individual learns. So put them in the spot. In Puerto Rico, we say, tíralo al medio. Put them in the spot. You know, in a nice way. I'm not saying, you know, calling your students and just put them right there and, you know, try to make sure that you create that atmosphere first. And in humanities, what we're trying to do is put them to think. And sometimes these questions don't have final answers. Many times, these questions don't have final answers. So the person is building herself or himself as we go. So this is an activity that I use with my students. Basically, they had to recreate a classical portrait, a painting, but they have to make it the way they would interpret it. This is at the left, you see the classical painting. At the right, you see my student recreating the portrait her way. So in the left-hand side, you see Retrato de la Madre Artista, mother of the artist from 1871, James McNeill Whistler. And then the student, Angelice Seda, she said, well, I am going to Creolize this. I am going to Puerto Ricanize this. So she dressed up as a bomba dancer, and you see the painting on the background. And, you know, the idea is, that was awesome. She was basically, it's incredible. She actually sat on next to the curtain and the two paintings and everything. So they had to immerse themselves in the experience. So in the process, and by the way, this is only part of the project. In the project, they had to explain what is it that they have to think in order to set this up. And what do you think the artist was thinking when he or she was setting this up? What were they trying to do? And when you look at the original and when you look at your creation, what do you think happened? Is there a different idea? Is there a universal idea? Is there a human idea? So these are the ideas that they came up with. And I love that one. The Amorillo, women at the window. By the way, that was done. She's holding a cardboard, a black cardboard. That's it. And then the student at the bottom, she says that that's her father's shirt. So she just destroyed her father's shirt and got a flower and put the flower in, you know. So the students had to recreate the feelings of the people that were doing this. So if I try to teach them the paintings and try to ask them to memorize who painted this or whatever, you know, it's not gonna work. But when they adopted the thing, now it's theirs, their creation. They were able to recreate the thing. I love this one. This is original from Ramón Frade, El Pan Nuestro de Cada Día, Our Daily Bread. And you see what the student did? He's using textbooks and his book bag. So El Pan Nuestro for the country people at the moment that Ramón Frade is painting is going to the field and bringing plátanos, right? Now, the students' Pan Nuestro is different. So here's an interpretation of a piece of work, art. Again, I could have said, tell me what Frade was trying to do with this painting. Okay, yeah, that would have been an assignment. But how about if you have to create the painting? And by the way, when I give the instructions at the beginning, I just say, you have to recreate this painting. And they go, what? Are you crazy? And I say, no, you have to recreate the painting. And then in the process, they suffer through the process of learning. So the process is actually engaging enough. Here you go, Da Vinci, The Last Supper. And you know what? This guy, he deserves, I don't know. After I saw this, I said, wow, I cannot just, he had to call his friends from the neighborhood. He's calling, he said, Professor, you don't know how hard it was to get them all here first. And second, to get them to pose. He said they had to take like 1,000 pictures in order to get the thing set up. Now, could you imagine? This is a community project. This is, so what are you doing in the class? This professor asked me to do the Last Supper. So what do you need? I need you guys to pose in this way. So why are we posing this way? Boom, you have a process of engaging and learning. This is humanities. But if I ask them, you know, or if I test them on who painted the Last Supper and where is it or something like that, or okay, you know, but when they have to make it, look at the detail. Look at these two guys at the extreme right, the three guys. They are actually, you know, really, everybody had, I don't know how they did it. It was challenging. So this is what I'm trying to do with the humanities. And at the end, this is my final slide. This is my final slide. A continuous lifelong experience which an active mind interacts with a wide open world to solve genuine problems that are continuous with yet different from previous experiences. It's important. I want to another paradigm that I like to break. Experience doesn't necessarily give you knowledge. Experience doesn't necessarily give you knowledge. It could, yes, but some of us go through experiences and don't learn from it, and I don't need to be philosophical about it. Your mom told you. Didn't you learn about your past experience, about what happened with that? And you know you didn't learn, so sometimes it takes a while. Robert Frost, and sorry, I could not travel both. You won't be able to travel both. You need to make choices, and those choices will take you somewhere, like it or not. You're going to end up somewhere, and hopefully you are not going to end up like this lady by a painting by Monet. Hopefully you're not going to end up like that. Monet was a master. And I don't know what you see, and I don't like to tell my students what I see. I want them to tell me what they see. For example, if this was a class, then I ask you guys, so what is she thinking? And when you look at that face, you know, and when you think about this being oil on canvas, this is painting, just painting on a piece of fabric. And then he recreates something deep within this person. And to end with, again, this is unfair because I love Sartre, but to end with Sartre, we're condemned to be free. We will make choices constantly, and those are not set up anywhere, nowhere. If you say, I made this choice, why? Because my mom told me, okay, well, you let your mom, your dad, whoever, decide what choices you make. So the life that you're building is shaped by your mom or dad or whoever. Sartre challenges us. We're condemned to be free. There's no way you could free yourself from being free. So you're not free from being free. I don't know if that makes any sense, but we are responsible for our choices. And if I am responsible for my choices, I hope not to end like this lady at the bar at the Folie Bergeret. Horrible. I tried, horrible. I hope you know, none of you know French, because I tried to make it sound really cool, but it doesn't work. By Monet, who's showing us something. And if Professor Molinares would be able to explain this, he's an expert. But my students are not. So they have to make it up. They have to, well, she is thinking this. And she's, why you say that? How do you know what she's thinking? Well, because she looks this way. Oh, have you looked that way at a certain moment? Yes, professor. I work at McDonald's, and sometimes I'm standing just like that. And the person is saying, let me have a Big Mac. And I'm looking at them this way. What freak am I doing here? Thank you very much. Thank you. That's it. I'm not going to be talking anymore.
Thank you so much, Professor Pagan. I'm sorry. Thank you for your extremely interesting presentation that makes us, I think everyone, go back to take the humanity class all over again. and I would say also the art appreciation class that we took, and maybe give it a twist with this new exercise that you provided in class. So many notes that I have, but I don't want to be the one always talking. So if anybody has any questions, any comments that you would like to share, please feel free and open your mic while I give Professor Molinares the co-host so he can share his presentation. Let me see what it is.
What blew my mind today was when he said, "Are we real? Are you real?"
Yes, yeah, we are. We are. Are we?
Are
No?
we? Exactly.
Are
Are
we
you
though?
sure about that? Are
One-
we real? What is going on?
It's a fascinating question, believe it or not, because for
Absolutely.
example, when you say is my Facebook page real? Well, yeah, it exists online, and I put pictures of me that look very nice all the time, and is that a real life?
Mhm.
Well, it's I
As
made some
real as you
choices
want
in
it to
terms of
be.
the
As real
pictures.
as you want it to be. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
Interesting.
You know what, Professor Pagan, I remember this is just a personal experience. And when I was a freshman, I had to take the first philo course that you're enrolled in, like for the first year in UPR. And I will always remember this professor who said, are we in the concrete? Is this concrete or is this the abstract? And I remember like I spent a whole month, like I felt like I was going through a mental state situation because I felt like I was asking myself every day, or am I in real life, like living and breathing? And I was like, these philosophy professors are either, I don't know where they're living, but I spent like my whole semester asking every day, am I dreaming or am I living? It was intense. It was an intense class.
When you think of it, and I'm telling you, it's also it's kind of abstract, but however, think about it. When we build a life that we build, and the meanings that we give to the experiences we have, if I ask each one of you, so what is the meaning of your life? You are going to have a specific meaning based on the interpretations that you give to the experiences you've had. And sometimes to the experiences you haven't had. Sometimes you create your own idea of who you are, blah, blah, etc. David Hume, for example, David Hume said that there's no way that we could define the I. There's no way. You could come up with definitions. You could say stuff, but there's no limited approach to saying this is what I am. Boom, that's it, final.
I agree.
Yeah, definitely.
Professor Molinares, I think you're able to share your screen.
Sure, let me see how is it that I do that?
On the side.
Let's stop one. Is that what it is?
There
Oh,
it is.
look, there's
Yes,
Roscoe.
but
And how do I upload the document?
and just go into your presentation, because we are already seeing your screen.
Oh, okay.
We are seeing the Roscoe red.
Find my presentation.
Okay, yeah, we see it.
All right.
Perfect.
All right, so I named my presentation Creating Experience Through Art. Hold on a second. To form experts in life. 'Cause one of the things I found interesting was that the words experience and expert have the same roots. And I believe they are related also. An expert is a person who has a lot of experience in a field. If you realize whenever they ask us for our CV and for a job or something like that, they're gonna ask us for what is your experience doing something, and that also means how much contact do you have with the field. So that's why I named it that way, because what I want to talk about is the importance of the idea of bringing experience or creating experiences. I believe that us as educators are creators of experiences to not only like a cable or a pipeline that passes information through, but that we create experience. And by the way, thank you, Professor Diaz and Professor Pagan for their presentations. And actually, when Professor Pagan was showing that activity with the Last Supper of Da Vinci, that was my favorite, because that was definitely an experience for those students, for the student who put everything together, and for everybody who was involved. I mean, even the people who probably were not a student of the class, now they even know about that, something that they initially were not interested. And that is something that they will not ever forget. So that was interesting. I think it connects very well with what I want to talk about here. So sometimes we're in our classroom, and this is what we face. I mean, all of us know it, and all of us have seen it. And there are times that at moments, not even one student probably is looking at you or maybe listening to you. We don't really know what's going on behind in their screens, but certainly it almost feels like a battlefield, like we are at war at that moment, and it's a war for attention. I mean, the whole idea of life at some point, it almost seems like a competition, constant competition for everything. And in this case, in our case, we're kind of competing for attention with our students, because their attention is diverted to other places and other activities at the moment. So it is important for us to empower ourselves with tools to be able to fight that battle. And I believe art, with all the tools that we have been given in these presentations, is basically empowering the student with tools to, I mean, the educator with tools to fight this battle eventually. And I believe art has that. Art has the power to captivate our attention and spark our imagination with simple elements such as color and composition. Just starting with that. Sometimes we think of art, or maybe some professors that probably are not in the art field or are not related to art, or maybe don't even like art. That might feel like a challenge, like a little bit daunting to think about a big painting like Da Vinci painting or something like that. But we can start with really basic elements that have to do with art too, which are like color and composition. Just the way we deliver our message in our presentations, just the way we organize elements in our blackboard. All that has to do with art too. It has to do with color and composition, and it has to do also with attracting that attention, or robbing that attention from that cell phone, even if it's for 1 second, at least we have won that little battle. So it's important that the professors are all aware of that idea, that they can also make their presentations a little more relevant if they pay attention to elements like color, composition, etc. And now, is this something I can close? I guess I just did. Well, now let's go to some definition of what art is. Some really basic definition. One is from Encyclopedia Britannica, and art, also called as visual art. Usually, when people think of art, they're thinking of visual art. It's a visual object or experience consciously created through an expression of a skill or imagination. So a skill is important, and imagination too. This one is from Oxford Dictionary. It's the expression or application of human creative skill. The word skill is again there, and imagination again. Typically in a visual form, such as painting or sculpture, producing works to be appreciated primarily for their beauty or emotional power. So I want to highlight some words here, and one is experience, because that's kind of what I want to bring up in this presentation, the idea of creating an experience, such as the experience that Professor Fagan shared with his students, showing those paintings. That's part of the experience we're talking about. And then expression. Expression is something that has to come from you. Expression is not mechanical, it's not just information. It really comes from what each person is. I want to highlight also emotional power. Emotional power is what's going to give that experience that connection, and it's going to dig the information deeper, down deeper into the person, not only into his memories, because we all know that memory sometimes can get lost, but emotional experiences take longer or never go away. Now, some of you also mentioned John Dewey in their presentations, and how important it is, because he was a philosopher and educator that also brought about the importance of using experience in our classrooms for delivering our content. And he specifically did lectures and wrote essays about art and the experience of art in education. And one of the ones I like the most is this one here, which says, either art is a continuation of natural tendencies, of natural events, or art is a peculiar addition to nature, springing from something dwelling exclusively in the breast of a man. Wherever, I cover this with my, sorry, can you all see the bottom part of it?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, wherever name be given to the latter. So here it's saying that this experience is not just whatever is out there in the natural world, but it's something that we as artists, or in our case, we as educator, add to nature. We're gonna add to our information. We're gonna give it like our own feeling, our own life to it. We're gonna bring to life information. That's what we do as communicators. We just don't present information as if it's a book, but we are the book. We are the letters of that book, and we're giving it out. And that's the importance of things like a poem. It's not just words. When you say it in a way that you convey emotions into it, you are giving it more power to the information that we're saying. And anything you say, I mean, it might not even have to be a poem. So if you're able to convey emotion to what you're reading, to what you're telling the students, that's going to create an emotion on them too. So he also said an experience occurs when a work is finished in a satisfactory way. A problem solved, a game is played through, a conversation is rounded out, and fulfillment and consummation conclude the experience. So things that we can incorporate in our classrooms, like playing, that ludic experience, that idea of enjoying something, of having fun, if it's associated with the process of learning, it creates in the student a more open pathway to their learning. So conversations have to be meaningful too. One of the things that I consider really important to engage the students in this process is to get to know the student. That's why that initial contact that sometimes we're reminded of that we need to have with the student before we start a course is so important, because that is the point. If we make an initial contact when we get to know all the students too, when we ask them questions, where are you from? What are you studying? What are your interests in life? We're getting to know them, and that way we can design our content a little more in a more directed and emotional way to them, because we know what kind of things connect with them. If we know we're going to have criminal justice students, if we know we're going to have psychology students, we know exactly how to address to them. So that initial contact with the student is very important too. So that book I was talking to you about, John Dewey, about his art as an experience, it's out there, and I recommend you guys to read it, find it somewhere. And now some more quotes from him. We do not learn from experience, we learn from reflecting on experience, which is what Professor Pagan was saying also. Experience itself is not gonna teach anything, it's not gonna tell us everything. We need to reflect on it. We need to sit down. How many times in our day do we sit down and even think what we did in the morning? Sometimes we didn't even know what we did in the morning. Sometimes we didn't even realize what we experienced. We don't even take the time to it. So if we don't reflect, and that's what reflection is, it's like looking back to something that happened. So if we don't reflect on the experience, we're never going to learn from it. So a good way to help the students learn something is not only giving them the experience, but helping them take a time to reflect on it and get information from it, see what they learn. Another one is give the pupils something to do, something to learn, and the doing of such a nature as to demand thinking, learning naturally results. I know it's reading a little bit convoluted here, but that's the way he wrote it. That means that experience had also to generate thinking. When you ask questions that are challenging questions, when you ask questions that touch their emotions, those questions generate thoughts, and that also generates easier way of learning. So it's not just a random experience, an experience that provokes thinking, that provokes learning. So it has to be very intentional. Art is the most effective mode of communication that exists. He also says that. And it is because what I said before, art has the ability to connect emotionally with people. And also because art has the tools like color and design and expression and brush strokes and all these things that can touch those inner fibers of emotion into each individual. If we teach today's students as we taught yesterday, we rob them of tomorrow. So we need to be teaching in our present times, and reality is constantly changing and technology is constantly changing. So we have to provide the students with their ability to access this future, that future that they're working on, because that's basically what they're doing. The work they're doing at the school is for their future. They're doing something for their future. So it's important to be with the current days and teach the students today the way students learn today, the way they understand reality today. So it's good to be in touch with today's reality, to be able to do that. Another important author, I didn't find much from him, and it's Douglas Laird, who was a pioneer of the field of training and human resource development. He developed this sensory theory, which is where he talks about effective learning takes place when all senses are stimulated. So if we can involve all senses in our teaching in any way, not only visual, but with sound, even with smells, if you can bring something, you know, like if you're talking about culture and bring a piece of food that has to do with that culture, all those senses, or taking them out and expose them to nature, or doing things like that. Even if it's a homework, go to the beach and observe the birds and reflect about it. If you can find ways to engage in experiences, that's going to convey your message in a clearer way, and it's going to stick to them more. Now, one of the things I wanted to show about the power of art is that it has the ability to make us see things in a different way. And that's what artists do. Artists feel things when they see it, they feel in a different way, and they express it in a different way. This is a cathedral in Arles, France, and this is how Van Gogh saw that same cathedral. So it's the same cathedral from the same point of view, the same church, but look at the way he saw it. Look at the way he painted the windows, the way he did the clock. He did it all his own way, and it seems like it has remained the same. Even the colors are different. He put in his own colors into it. So art has that ability to take reality to a step forward from what it is. It's not just a picture, it is more than that. Is now is an expression. Now you also see the artist's hand, because you can see his brush strokes there, and that is important too. So it's in a way a subjective experience of each educator, of each professor. So each one is going to put his own flair to reality. Let's say like the church is the subjects that we are teaching, but we are giving our own pizzazz, our own feeling to it, and that's what we're going to communicate to the student. Another example is this nice little bridge here. It's in the Monet Garden in France, also North France. And that was actually his house. And he liked just to go out and paint his garden. And this is how he would see that same bridge. So he even changed, well, I don't know if by the time he painted it was blue or it stayed green the whole time, but he changed at least the angle of the art, and he enhanced it with color. So that's another ability that art has, is to enhance reality with the power of expression, with the power of color. And just because Professor Pagan mentioned it, I wanted to bring it up. This is just a square, a simple square that we can made of pixels that we can find in the internet every time. But this is Rothko's red painting, and that's just the name of the painting is red. So it doesn't have to be necessarily content that is so defined and so limited. It could be something really abstract, and that's what art and humanities sometimes convey. They convey things that they are not exact as math. And I tell that to my students sometimes. This is not a math class. There is sometimes they're not going to be here wrong or right answers. I just want to know your answers. I want to know what you think, what you feel about something. And that this is an example of that. It's not an exact situation. It's just pure expression, even though Rothko was very calculated in the way he created his expression, because he wanted to make sure that the viewer feel exactly a certain way. So he was very deliberate. This is not Jason Pollock creating drips. This is a more calculated way of creating a painting. Some of his painting, they even created a chapel in Texas, and he was very involved of the design of that chapel. And he would calculate the way the light would come in through the window, the color of the walls, the size of the chapel itself. Everything creates an experience. And I think that's a good way how we can approach our classroom. It's a place where we are gonna create experience for our students. And now, continuing with a beautiful poem that Professor Diaz brought up, we're gonna do an activity. Let me see if I can actually open YouTube. That has to do with that same poem that we've been reading. And for this activity, we're all gonna need a piece of paper and a pen. So take your time to grab that while I set up my video here. And I hope that it comes out with sound, because let's actually test that. Oh, yes, it did. Can you all hear? Could you hear?
No, wait, I think there's a part in your screen sharing that you should be able
Okay.
to. Let
Let me see how I can.
me see if it's sharing. Should be able to share audio and video.
So I go back to screen sharing.
Yes, go to your screen sharing settings. Share with audio. Mhm.
Do you see it there? Some? Oh, share computer sound.
Yes, there.
Oh, Jesus. No, not a password. Do I really need a password for that?
I don't know. Oh, and it said something, please restart. Maybe if you put in the chat the address of I'll try to do it, and I'll stop your presentation and I'll try to present it.
Okay, that sounds like
Yeah.
a great idea. Hold on, so I have to go to the chat. All right, so there's the link. So the idea with this exercise that we're gonna do is we're gonna listen to the poem, but we're only gonna focus on Frost's face, that picture of him that is there. One of the situations I ran into with my students was that I had these students and I wanted to teach these students how to draw a nose. So I gave him all the indications on how noses are drawn and how you define them. And then I gave him now do exercises of different kind of noses, and I gave her even pictures of different kind of noses that she was going to copy. When the exercise came back to me, she drew the same exact nose over and over again. And I understood, and I had a conversation with her to see what had happened. And she said, well, I don't really observe. And that was the problem. Many times we think that art has to do with ability to create and paint, but that's not really where art starts. It starts in our eye, it starts in our mind, in our heart. Sometimes when I was a kid, when you start drawing, they tell you, oh, he's got a steady line, or tiene pulso, like they say in Spanish, because he knows how to draw. But it's more than that. It is really starts with observation. So we're gonna do an exercise of just observation, to the point that we're not gonna look at our paper. We're gonna listen to that poem, and we're just gonna focus on John Frost's face, Robert Frost's face, while he's reading the poem. I believe he's the one that reads the poem. And without looking at the paper, we're just gonna draw his face. But we're not gonna think it's a face. We're gonna think it's that road. We're gonna think those lines are gonna be like a road. Because part of the blockage when you're drawing is that you think it's a face, and you go, well, faces are difficult to paint or difficult to draw. And you think it's gonna be hard for you. So forget that that is a face. It's just a shape. It's just a form. It might not even be a person. So that's how you approach a drawing. And sometimes that's the way we should approach our subjects in class, in a way more objective. Sometimes our students have like preconceptions about the information we're gonna give them. This is a way to teach them that information can be objective. It can be only what you're seeing. So that's what we're gonna do. So grab your pen and a pad and a piece of paper. Again, don't look at the paper. Just listen to the words, listen to the music. Try to get lost in those wrinkles of his face, in his face, and just reproduce the face as we draw it. See if we can put it in full screen.
Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both and be one traveler. Long I stood and looked down one as far as I could, to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other as just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear. Though as for that, the passing there had worn them really about the same. And both that morning equally lay in leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day, yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by. And that has made all the difference.
All right. Now take a look at that drawing. How it looks. Let's share our drawings of Robert Frost poem.
If you take it back a little bit, Professor, we can see it because it gets
It's
really close.
blurry.
It looks blurry.
Mhm.
The
think-
farther, the better.
It's the background, Professor.
Ah, because you have the
Oh,
background. Yeah,
okay.
that's what it is. Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna
So I don't know if you can see mine.
Yes, I see it. They are all wonderful.
I did look at it though, because then, but not to, just to understand where I had to make the line. Because if,
But
be, for example, to put the ear, I had to look where I had finished the hair. So I don't know if it was cheated or not.
That was cheating. It was absolutely not looking at it. Or maybe if I put it next to my face.
Or in front of you.
Well, mine is not that much different from your drawings. But the idea is that there is no right or wrong. It's more about the experience, and you were almost forced to observe that phase more than if you are, because in the moment when you are going back and forth, you are losing information. You're losing milliseconds of information from that phase, and that is the idea, that you focus on what you are observing instead of the results of it. Now I'm trying to go. I just had one more slide, but I can actually just read it. I just wanted to finish. I don't even have to put this slide. I think it was just a phrase from Carl Berner, or Berner. I don't know how to pronounce. It is a phrase that is used very commonly in the hospitality world. You know, I've worked for Disney, Universal, so I'm familiar with that kind of language. And one of the things they always remind you, and I think it's something that we can also apply in our classroom, is this person said they may forget what you said, but they will never forget how you made them feel. Of course, they say it talking about guests of theme parks, of course, but our students are our guests. And if what we want is for information to stick to them, the best way to do it is kind of attach that information to a feeling. And that way there will be more chance for them to remember. Even if they don't remember the exact words, they will remember the experience and what the information was about. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Professor, for your presentation and for the practical exercise. I wasn't able to see the other participants, but I don't know if it's my camera in between the sharing screening. So I'm sure everybody had an experience, as you said.
Yes.
So we have a few minutes for questions or comments. If anybody, you can open your mics. Feel free to open your mic and share your comment or your experience, how you felt, how you went through the exercise. That I wanted to comment on Robert's frost face. It had so many details that even though I understood your point of taking, of not looking at your paper, but oh my God, you do have to look, I think, because there's so many detail that I wanted to draw in that. And if I didn't look at the paper, I would have designed it all the way up to his head, like the forehead. It was amazing. So thank you for that. So if nobody else has a question, Professor Hector Perez Signini, what is your favorite painter and why? You're in mute, Professor.
My favorite painter actually is it's a designer, it's a printmaker called Alphonse Mucha. Is the one that does Art Nouveau images. Since I took studies in graphic design also, I'm kind of like a hybrid, and a lot of my paintings sometimes come out as illustrations, really. But let me see if I can find, or I'll put in the chat his name so you can look at some of his pictures. And you'll see, you'll know that you have seen his pictures somewhere, especially if you like Art Nouveau.
So Professor Maria Virginia Osecha mentions Carlos Cruz Diaz, Cinetic Art. Alfonso. I don't know. I haven't seen. Mine is Monet. I recently was able to see the painting, The Girl with the Umbrella, at the Washington Gallery of Art, and it was amazing to see it in person. Yeah. And the ballerinas, Renoir's ballerina, those are marvelous. Yes, and being able to see the real paintings it's an experience and a feeling. It's an incredible feeling.
Yes, I've seen people crying looking art paintings.
Yeah, I kind of was. Oh yes, I've seen Alphonse Muir.
Yes.
Professor Molinares, I don't know if you went to the Dali presentation at the, where was it? It was the Dali,
The Dali Museum.
Museum.
the museum. Were you able to see the presentation here in Orlando with the movement of the paintings and all of that? Were you,
No,
The
I
Van
haven't
Gogh.
been to one of those.
sorry, not Dali, Van Gogh.
The Van Gogh, yeah.
Were you
But
able?
I think they did one of Dali too. I know they brought the Van Gogh here, but no, I missed it. I was meant to be, but I couldn't. Yeah, that there it is. That's an example of an immersive experience on a page.
It was beautiful. It was,
So you did it, you went there.
I went, and it was definitely immersive. You could sit down on the floor or just like lay back on the floor and see all the paintings moving. And it was like watching a whole movie. It was beautiful. It was, I never, because I've seen the paintings, but not like,
Yes.
so I was like, wow, it was beautiful. I think they have in St. Petersburg. I think they're still in St. Petersburg. So if you're able to go, I recommend it. It's beautiful.
I'll give it a shot.
The Dali Museum in St. Petersburg also. It was super great experience to see the
Yeah.
paintings. Yeah. Mhm. And I'm not sure if the Basquiat exhibition is still on at the museum
At
here
the
in
Orlando
Orlando.
Museum,
Yeah, the
yeah.
Orlando Museum. I think it's gone. I missed it. I think, I'm not sure, but thank you. So as we are closing down this panel, first I wanted to thank everybody that came and joined and participated. Specifically, thank you for the professors that once I reached out to them, trying to think to bring you something kind of different today, they said quickly yes. I didn't have to ask or beg. It was just at the first yes. So I'm very excited to for them, for their enthusiasm with my projects and our projects. So as we wrap up, tools, at least on my perspectives, tools or skills that I could pick up from the three presentation, letter poems. Try to think about our specific themes in class, and we can convert that in a letter, in a poem, to just get that student to understand what we're trying to do. Use the Padlet application, extremely useful, as Professor Diaz brought in. Professor Pagan, thought-provoking, building logical arguments. That was my take on his presentation. How do we do that in all of our classes? Business, science, math. So think about those thought-provoking, building logical arguments. Professor Molinares, color composition, use of the 5 cents, and our perspective. Focus on observing. How do we put that in place or in practice in our context? So just writing down those pointers, those skills, those tools that I think we can apply in all around the programs. I don't know if you guys have wrote down your thoughts, your skills, your tools. So please, if you feel like sharing, we can use the chat or send them to my email, and we'll share them also with the professor. Professor Pagan, Diaz, and Molinares are always available to share with you more tools and skills that they have brought on. So thank you everyone for participating, for being here today. An applause for the presenters. And I think we're done for today. You still have the afternoon free. Enjoy your weekend. Charge batteries to start a new week on Monday. We're almost at the end of the semester. Thank you for all you do in class for our students. Very grateful.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you so much for participating.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.